Hey there, lovely souls. I'm your host, astrologer, transfusion life coach Lumi Pelinku, and today we are going to be taking a deep dive into the magic of astrology and unravel the mysteries of your sun, moon, and ascendant signs. First up, let's talk about the big three. This is the 3 points of the birth chart in which we all look to in terms of understanding the personality makeup and as well as the soul expression. What are you here for? How are you going to be living out your life? And what can you do to get to point A to point B in your overall life experience leading to fulfillment? First, let's talk about the sun sign. Think of it as the radiant heart of your overall being. Wherever it's positioned in the birth chart, it governs your sign itself, given by whatever season that you were born in, such as Aries season or Cancer season. It talks about your overall identity and purpose in this life. It talks about where your overall radiance has to lie. And it also powers up your motivation and helping you find a sense of grounding into your purpose as well. It holds the key to your fundamental traits, motivations, and overall vitality. And in principle, this planetary body is our destination point, our overall soul essence. The sun shows where we hold the most light in our birth charts and is the guiding light in which we can obtain a higher conscious mindset. Now, the sun sign is also where we can reach that higher level of understanding about our own process and how we can experience fulfillment in this life. So you can look at it as a way of if ever you feel lost in your journey, the sun sign will actually help you refocus back to self and as well as help you remind what your central purpose is. It extends the natural gifts that you will be retrieving in this lifetime. So sometimes you may not feel like your sun sign because there are other positions of the birth chart that may be predominantly governed by another sign. So whenever you are going through challenges or a series of obstacles in your life path, which we all do naturally, the sun sign emanates its truth through you. And therefore you start stepping forward and acting more like your sun sign. So for instance, like if you're an Aries suns are all about pioneering through obstacles and as well as initiating the first spark of purpose and motivation. And every sun sign basically has a particular pull and purpose. It has a light self and as well as a shadow self and expression. Whenever you're generating yourself through shadow self expression, for instance, like your egocentric tendencies and things like that, that's usually when you are dimming your light. And also it leads to you to not really tap into the full potential of your sun sign. And therefore you may not feel an inkling towards the traits of your sun sign. So sometimes you do have to start paying attention as to what is truly fulfilling you in this life, what makes you feel the most light. And wherever you find that in the birth chart, that is where you'll find the clearing in your direction and as well as motivation to help you keep going. And that's the way your sun sign manifests in your birth chart and as well as in astrology. Now let's talk about the moon in the birth chart. The moon represents our emotion, intuition, and nourishment. This celestial body reveals our innermost selves and the way we may not be disclosing ourselves openly. It can be our setback at times because if we live too much into this expression in terms of like withholding our emotions or not really tapping fully into the emotional mindset, it leads to stagnation in your soul growth. So when you're in connection with your moon sign, it leads you to understanding what makes you feel safe and secure in this life. The moon also represents our maternal figures in our life, and as well as our past habitual patterning, like our childhood selves. And wherever we ever felt like safety and security, we fall back into the moon sign expression in order to find those things. And that's where you'll feel the most comfortable in this life. And sometimes when you're like in a comfortable territory for too long, that's what leads to sluggishness in your life. And you may feel lack of motivation and everything. But you could think of the moon sign as a way for you to help you refocus back into your emotional nourishment. And it's also a representation of our childhood, how we acted as children, and also a representation of our past life lessons, what we've carried over from past lives before into the now. The moon also helps you connect with your inner child and the ways you could find healing if ever you feel unfinished business involving your childhood. It also describes the relationship between you and your mother and the way you can relate with your children. So if you tie in together the sun and the moon and how they work together, it describes the way you express your assertion, which is through manifestation of the sun, while the moon sign is in relation to how you receive in this life, which is the feminine energy. And the sun and moon also represents the parents in our birth chart. So if you see how the sun and moon converse with each other, it describes the relationship dynamics in which it manifested through your parents and as well as early childhood phases. And it can also bring out a ripple effect as to how you relate to others in relationships, or how you seek out like your security and standing in life, your confidence. So when you start learning about your sun and moon, it helps you invoke like a really strong sense of self and conscious awareness as to how you can work with these celestial energies. So that's the sun and the moon in a nutshell of how you work with it. Now we're going to look at the rising sign in astrology. The rising sign is basically like your cosmic calling in the world. It's your shield, your mask, how you express yourself in this world. It's the first impression that you leave. And it's also the overall projective lens of how you perceive the world around you. From the moment that you were born, the rising sign that was ascending on the eastern horizon determines how people perceive you. It shapes your outward appearance and demeanor as well. You can also see the rising sign as a filter in your life experience, as it initiates your soul self into your body at birth. As it shapes your personality, it also adds a brushstroke of colors and impressions of how you build the world and how you are part of the world. And I like to see it as like a book cover of your story. The ascendant also holds influence over your physical appearance, how you dress, the way you express your energy, and it's also in the way you want to maintain yourself. And it's the way of how you connect with your identity. So for instance, if you are like working with your rising sign, it's also governed by a planetary body in which you work closely with. Each sign in the zodiac has a planetary ruler in retrospect of the experience that you go through with your ascendant sign. So you could think of it like a planetary guardian angel that you're working with in your life. And the rising sign is the one energy that we are working closely with throughout our life. The sun and the moon are active agents of our birth chart. We also call it like the luminaries, whereas the rising sign is the way of how you get there in terms of how do you master above the past with your moon sign and your habitual tendencies, whereas you want to reach to your sun sign, which promises overall fulfillment and joy and peace in your life. The rising sign is one of the most key important ingredients for you to step into your own authentic self, but it's also a key ingredient in which you may go through series of setbacks if you're not in check with yourself. So it does shape your identity the most. The sun is the identity, but the rising sign actually helps you form, and it helps strengthen you even more as you go through your life in terms of mastering your fulfillment. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that this talk today has inspired you to take a deeper dive into astrology and explore what it can do for you in terms of finding overall fulfillment, peace, and serenity in your life. And until next time, I cannot wait to explore more with you. Be well.